And welcome to the March 22nd, 2023 COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee. You have your agendas in front of you and we will jump right in. The first item on the agenda is just to review what this committee has already allocated in funding. So everything was in electronic form that was distributed. So as a reminder, we have awarded $251,765,830. So of the 259. So we're pretty close to having everything fully allocated. We have a bit of a place marker for the Bordeaux Collective, which was $2.5 million. So we'll talk a little bit more about them later as far as coming back. But if you count that as an earmark, it's not been recommended yet, but the committee, was close to making that recommendation, wanted a few more things, and we said we won't give away those last dollars. So if you earmark those, there's roughly $5.5 million left. The analysis that I sent out is for the internal Metro departments. I will say we're now working with the nonprofits, but this was to go back through every single award and say, okay, you've had it for this long, where do you think you are? A lot of it is just too soon. So it's expected that they will, spend everything. But we did have a couple. If you have the spreadsheet, there were a few that we highlighted in kind of a pinkish orange color. And some of the amounts are small, but like the health department didn't end up using the funds for their electronic data records. Like they said, we were able to charge it somewhere else, so you can have that 184 back. Not a huge amount, but then when you start to add up, the other ones that are showing some potential excess, right now, the Community Safety Partnership Fund, that was because they ended up with multiple sources of funding and they were kind of using like the first in, first out. So they may either not use the funds or they may come back and ask them to be reallocated for a different purpose. I think they'd like to keep the funds, but they may not need them all for what was exactly awarded.
Can you remind us what that one was?
The one was the Napier-Sedacum Community Safety Plan. So the total award was $200,000, and that was really for things like lighting, some traffic calming, some things in those two specific communities related to safety. And then there was also a Cure Violence and Community Safety, which was $1 million, $1,060,000, and they think they might have about $297,000 that remains unspent. So, and then, so that's both kind of under that community safety, Cure Violence.
Mary Jo, do they have to return the unused?
They have to either use it for only the specific reason it was awarded or return it. So they may want to come back and say, hey, I have this much money left over, but I have this new reason to invest maybe in those communities or in a very similar type program, but if it doesn't meet the resolution exactly the way it was written, they have to come back to the committee. So that's very possible that they might come back rather than return the funds.
Right.
But we were just trying to get a sense of what might be available. The other item, and this will sound a little familiar with the Small Business Recovery Plan. If you recall, we had money set aside for nonprofits, and even at the time, we didn't award it all. And then we had a couple that were awarded, and then the nonprofits couldn't fulfill all of the documentation requirements. So on that one, there's $275,000 that has never been contracted. So it hasn't been contracted. So again, they'd either have to come, like one of the eligible uses is for one of the existing nonprofits to come back and say, hey, we still need more funds to help either market or technical assistance.
Which group was it?
That did not, LGBTQ Chamber did not, and I think that was it. I think they're the ones that did not end up contracting.
Okay.
And then there was still some funds that were never.
Just want to know, because that might be good if there is a gap, right? In if they have a specific community outreach component to it, that there might be another like nonprofit in that same space.
Yes, the way the resolution was written, it has to be one that was already funded though. So
Okay.
even if we were gonna award it to a different nonprofit, that would still have to come back to the committee. But it's there.
Okay.
Yeah. I can get the exact list. Let me just make some notes here. Let's see, on the economic development plan that was within the mayor's office, that went out for bid, and after the contracts have been in, we think there's $183,000 that will be left over based on the contract bid. So that will come back. And same with the market value analysis. Those were connected in the same presentation, and that contract has come back with possibly $205,000 of the $350. They're just much lower. So right now, the total amount that's identified as potentially coming back to the committee is $1.3 million.
Okay.
You know, a lot of it, when it went to departments for different spending, those have been spent. If it's for construction, it hasn't been spent yet because it's just going to be a longer process. I don't think there's any construction projects around Nashville that are coming in under budget. So I don't expect money to come back because of that reason. So, you know, but where we will see is if, like, there's still a few more, like, if you remember, like, the fairgrounds, there was rent relief for the vendors for $1 million. They've really only spent probably about a fourth of that. They'd like to come back to the committee and ask for an extension of the time. They have some great stats to show that they've been able to bring in more vendors and new vendors. And so most people, I think, want to come back with either an extension of time or a similar but alternate use that isn't already defined in the resolution. So I don't expect a whole lot coming back. You know, if we're at $1 million, maybe it goes to 2, you know, 3, but not 20 or 30.
So even the categories where you have money coming back is not potentially coming back to the fund. They are coming back to the committee to ask for a extension or alternate use.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. In most cases, I think that will end up being the case. And in talking to the nonprofits, a lot of them just want an extension of time. You know, so they're not trying to change the use of funds. They just want to run the same program but for longer. So
How far can that time be extended?
So this is really something for the committee to think about. We have until 12/31/24 to obligate the funds. So I have been kind of thinking we need to know if money's going to come back probably by 6/30/24 so that we can actually get it through committee for a recommendation to get to council to get passed. I mean, it could, maybe it's 9:30, you know, but we don't want to run too close. Yeah, we don't want to run too close to not, you know, if something gets deferred at council for a meeting, we've got to have it re-obligated. The other thing that the committee needs to think about is what's going to kind of be our, what I'll call at the end, that variable, that kind of that automatic. And we did that with the CARES Act with public safety salaries. That we said if anything is over or under budget, at some point it's all going to kind of come out of this remaining amount, and then whatever's left, that net amount is going to public safety salaries. I think we should do the same thing because we're never going to get it to exactly zero. You know, we're not going to get it to the penny on allocations, and then as money, you know, so then it has to all be spent by 12/31/26. So even though we have it all obligated at 12/31/24, we're going to have some plus or minuses, not so much that they can overspend, but we're going to have some leftover dollars at some point as we get closer to 12/31/26. We have to have something in place before 12/31/24 that has like an automatic obligation to it, whether, you know, Barnes Fund, participatory budgeting, some other kind of, you know, nonprofit fund or something. You know, at some point we have to have something that is kind of that default so that we don't end up having to re-obligate everything down to the penny.
So Mary Jo, looking at this, is it the 5.5 million at the bottom plus the 1.35 that needs to be revisited, even if it's for reallocating it to a prior purpose?
And the 2.5 is technically not
allocated
recommended yet.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get into that. But what I also wanted to make sure is that, if you add those all together and you think about it, we're at 10 million. So
Right.
I don't, that might feel different than 3 or 4 or 5. And so this idea of, do we want to keep allocating down to really small amounts, or do we just want to say at this point, let's just keep a reserve and see what happens? We know we can reallocate all the way into late 2024. And it might be more then. Like, we think we're working with this dollar amount, but that might go up. So, any questions on what's already been allocated? And we kind of keep this updated now monthly. I will say probably quarterly, we're checking in with the departments, and quarterly. And so by March 31st, or for the period ended March 31st, we will have all the departments and all the nonprofits. So in April or May or whenever we meet next, we can give that for everybody.
So first things first, do we need to figure out about the Bordeaux Collective and the $2.5 million if we want to pull the trigger on that? And then we know what $2.5 million is still a lot of,
It is,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's what I would say to start with.
Yeah, so this is, if we're finished with this, then let me I'll outline the other things that were on the agenda. Is that I will still get these trickle-in requests of, hey, if there's any money left, or if we decide, can we come present? And so today there's no recommendations to be made. What's on the list is, do you as the committee want to entertain these requests specifically, or none at all? Just like in general in policy, we don't want to do anymore, or yeah, we'll do some, but these are the ones we want to hear, and these we're not ready to hear yet. We'll just keep them on the wait list or the back burner, or whatever you want to call it. And so the Bordeaux Collective is one of them, and that question is, I assumed, but let me ask, do you all want them to come back? And so this is kind of about, who do you want to come to the next meeting to present? Anybody? Or you're ready to make a decision on the Bordeaux if we go through a refresher? And then these 4 that are new are the additional requests. And do we
Why
want
were
any
we
of them to
waiting
come?
on the what happened with why didn't we make a decision then?
There were some questions.
We reduced the amount. I think they asked for 5 million, and we said we would consider 2.5 million. Can you come back with a proposal of what you would do with the 2.5?
And there were some other questions
Yeah, some
about.
other uses.
Yes, and what kind of recurring revenue kind of, I know, Jose, you had a couple questions, and so they had called one time, and I actually went back and watched the meeting again, and I wrote down like the 4 or 5 things and said, hey, you guys, this is what I took, here's the link to the meeting, watch the meeting again, here are the 4 or 5 questions that I think they would like you to answer to make sure that they're comfortable with this investment.
So are they ready for that? Oh, they are. Okay.
Yep, so they're ready to come back as soon as they are invited
That's
back.
fair.
Yeah,
So,
I think we should have them back.
yeah.
We said we would.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get them at the next meeting.
And I think, because I think the longer we have this money out there, the longer we're gonna have, oh, well, hey, what about this? Oh, well, hey, what about this? So I just think, just for simplicity purposes, if we could, because we've already sort of said this, I thought, which was we're
did.
not doing this.
And we can
And then now
say-
here we are doing it again. And so I don't want, that's up to the will of the body to figure that out. But I do think we should come up with something like, this is it.
Yeah.
And this is the,
And what does
because
everyone
otherwise
have
we'll
to-
just have to,
Right.
we'll just be coming
agree.
back and back and back.
I do. I think that's what we said is, okay, if this committee wants to keep doing these allocations till the end,
Yeah.
or do we want to pick something and say,
Because
we're
see,
not
now
doing
we're
any
in the
more
Hunger
allocations?
Games situation of who's on this list, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Who's on the list?
The Nashville Food Project.
Speaking of Hunger Games.
Very first one. Nashville Food Project, the Big Brothers Big Sister TSU collaboration, an Ebike subsidy, and a WeGo and HBCU pilot. So those were the 4 new ones that have kind of been waiting in the wings.
And the only reason why they made this list because they're new.
Well-
new to us, right? Because there's this list that's in limbo.
Oh, no, some of these are old. Some of these, like Big Brothers Big Sisters contacted us a long time
So what
ago.
happened to the others? Why are they on this list? Because there's a good number of others that,
The committee already eliminated those.
so we did that at the end. So that's it. These are the only ones that
You haven't,
have not been told categorically.
Haven't
Okay.
discussed at all.
yep. And so it's really, if you all want to pick any of these, or you want to just say, based on principle, we want none of them? Or, oh, I really like this one. I mean, you all have the submissions.
Okay, can you give us a kind of a brief overview
Yep.
of how these fit into the criteria or in the priorities that we have? Because I'm looking at the food project, that's like, okay, that fits in our priorities. So I wouldn't say throw that out, but can you
Right.
tell us?
Yeah, so the
how the other
food
ones-
project, and I'll just give you the amounts, it's $876,000. It's over 2 years, and it's for a study, though. I think that's one thing that I think is worth, it's for a study. It's not to feed. It's not going to establish any programs. It's for a study.
Does that fall within the guidelines?
So, remember, I always hate to do this, but for full transparency, we have what, we kind of have all of the eligible expenditure categories. Most of ours have been either in direct public health or the negative economic impacts. This study would fall under the negative economic impact. You know, like if these are long time, historically underserved, individuals in our community, that would fit. Keep in mind, we have the safety net, and I forgot to do this just in order of the agenda, but I'll come back to. We file with the US Treasury as everything under government operations. So that gives us a safety net of, there's the intention of this committee to follow all of those expenditure categories and really kind of make sure that those are the items we're addressing, if that's the way we were reporting them to Treasury. I call the revenue replacement for government operations as kind of our safety net, because from a reporting perspective, we don't have to prove those.
So, little makes me uncomfortable, but a study, that's a really expensive study. And there's a lot of groups that are in the food insecurity space that I'm wondering, is this study duplicating effort? And is it really making an impact? Like we all, I think, in the very beginning decided we wanted these dollars to make a massive impact. And when you see a dollar spent, it's like, I see, and I don't know that a study, and I know the food project does a great job, but I don't know if I can justify almost $1 million for a study when there's other really great need that's truly impacting something. So I would be cautious on a allocation of that size for a study.
Okay.
I do want to comment on this from reading this proposal. The topic of hunger, I do think, is one that is, pretty basic in terms of we've got a tremendous need in this community. We have a lot of food deserts, a lot of needs. I think that any one organization like the Nashville Food Project, which several years ago I was very involved with, I haven't been for quite some time, but they all have their own niche. My understanding from reading this is it looks like there are 8 different groups that are asking for this collectively. This is not a Nashville Food Project request for $800,000.
That was what I gathered.
I have been in discussions in the past of trying to come up with a more holistic approach to addressing food insecurity in this community, mainly because it affects whether kids can learn well in school. It affects, just all sorts of aspects of quality of life. And it always seems that for whatever reason it stays fragmented. And it doesn't mean that people don't get meals from time to time, but there's not really a comprehensive approach for gathering food waste, reallocating food, and making sure that the needs are met. I think based on reading this, it raised a lot of questions in my mind about what we're going to end up with. Kind of like what Courtney's saying, you spend a lot of money on studies. We've faced that with other proposals we've had, where we're spending a lot of money on consultants to come back to tell us what we need to do. I do think this is an area that's intriguing enough because of the collaborative aspect of it with multiple organizations to have us hear from them at some point.
Yeah. And that's
I
what,
agree with that.
that's what this committee gets to decide is deciding to have them come doesn't mean you have to make the recommendation for funding. It's just that it's a topic that this committee decides is important enough that you want to learn exactly what they're asking and maybe be able to mold some of what, we don't have to take every proposal exactly as written. You all may say, I like this part, but not this part. I want to do this, but not this.
Yeah, I mean, if the end result is a document, then I don't think that's particularly helpful. If the end result is a plan that actually means that there's going to be an efficiency to how we address hunger, I would be much more favorable toward the proposal.
It might be helpful when evaluating our budget every year as far as council goes. If we have something to look at and say, these are where our gaps are, we could actually do some of this. It might be helpful in that sense. I don't know what. it would
As
look
far
like.
as the document you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. But I agree with Sarah as well, that if these partners use this information to institute some action,
That too.
whether through their own fundraising or through their own programming, that would be beneficial as well.
Does it have the deliverables on the study? Like, what are they wanting to,
I didn't
Not so
dig in.
much.
I
I don't
can't.
think so.
I'm not.
well, so it's almost $1 million study and we don't know what they're,
Well, I think
Looking
we're
to-
I'd
saying
rather
maybe
hear
we should
from
have them come in
Yeah,
and hear from them.
I don't want to make too
exactly.
many assumptions based on the paper. I'd rather let them
Yeah.
present. But, so do you all want to go, do you want me to walk through the four
Yes, please.
quickly? And then we'll come back and, I guess, vote? Okay, so that was the food project. Then we have Big Brothers Big Sisters in collaboration with TSU. So again, increasing the number of bigs that would be available to the kids in the community.
Big teachers.
and what's that dollar amount?
571,000 over 3 years.
I think it's worth listening to.
I do too.
Then the next one was EBikes, and this is $1 million subsidy for income qualified Nashvillians. So this was brought to us by Councilmember Sledge, and he was putting together more framework. He had asked me a couple questions about it. One of the things that originally, see, he actually had a resolution drafted. The way it was drafted, all $1 million could have gone, honestly, to somebody from 37205 who wanted a supplement for an e-bike. I said, I think that's gonna be a problem. I understand you're trying to get to affordable transportation, but the way it was written, there was, in my opinion, that was what he needed to address. So, a few things. So he's gonna work with getting a nonprofit partner who could then help with the income verification so that we have very much how our rent relief is by average median income, and so that they could work on those kind of parameters to say if this is really something then that somebody that we need to do income verification, they get larger subsidies towards the purchase of an e-bike.
How much is this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it would also be helpful to have some information about the need. I mean, how, do we need this in Nashville? I don't know. And there's no information about it
Yeah,
here.
I think he was trying to, I think something had been done in Denver. And so they were doing a program similar in Denver. I'd have to pull up the original resolution. I want to say the subsidies were along the lines of I think it was $250 for.
How much is an e-bike?
They can be up to $1,500,
Yeah.
$1,100.
So then,
So $250 for somebody not meeting an income verification, and then more $450 for those that.
so then was there anything in there, so if I qualify for the $450 subsidy and then I've got this bike, what stops me from turning around and selling it to Jennifer and making that $450 back because the value of the bike is still $1,500 or whatever it is? So I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of abuse there. If it was something where we subsidize a small monthly fee, but for them to have the asset that's been discounted heavily, I can guarantee you that's what's gonna happen because a lot of people are gonna rather have the cash than
it has been done in Denver. It's not something new, right? I did sign on to the resolution, so did multiple
Is
council
that close on
members.
those subsidy amounts? Does that sound about right?
I think somewhere along there, I would have to pull it up.
I think it was pretty close. I'm not too far off.
But several council members have signed on. There is the possibility that this just goes to the council. I think it'd be better for it to come here, for us to hear it, have those details. Councilmember Sledge be able to show us the study from Denver. And to your point, right, if there are any outstanding things that we want to add in there, then we can, if we want to make a recommendation for this body.
Is our city ready for however many bikes that would be? Because I don't want to ride a bike in
And is
Nashville,
there
to be
demand
honest with
for
you.
it? I mean, who?
I just bought a bike.
I'm,
I just bought a bike.
that scares me to death.
Are we saying that people who ride the bus?
Well, just think how much more $1 million could buy in terms of regular bikes.
But we're trying to get
Yeah, right.
cars off the
Well,
street.
true.
It's not like we have a hilly city.
Yeah.
Other forms of transportation, right? I look at my district where close to 20% of my district lives at or below the poverty line. Not everyone has cars. Buses are being used more and more every day. Sometimes a bike to be able to get to the bus stop is needed. Sometimes if their job is close enough, they could just take the bike. I have to walk a mile to my bus stop. I just bought a bike because that's gonna make things easier. There comes points where I have too much going on, and driving isn't easy for me. So I just take the bus to try and help me get through that. There are multiple barriers that are in place where these can actually help specific communities in need. That's why I think it would be important to hear the proposal.
To your point though, regular bicycles are a heck of a lot cheaper. We could be affecting a lot more people. Is that a thought, or does it have to be e-bikes?
It's
Or
hills that might be difficult for a lot of people. That's why there is more of push for e-bikes, especially going long distances. That's why I think
And I
it's,
think the resolution had something even about, some of them were I don't want to say cargo, but if you're loading down, I mean, you should see me when I come in the building, right? I have like 4 bags and you're so by the time you're carrying everything, the idea was you've really loaded down a bike. I think.
Now, is this a luxury item? I mean, what priority would this fall under?
I think the point is this is making transportation affordable. I think it's what
Okay.
Councilwoman Sepulveda is kind of talking about, that it's not luxury, that it actually becomes a form of transportation that
Okay.
somebody can afford. It might get them to being able to have a job versus not being able to go to work.
In comparison to a car.
Yeah. Okay, so then
I don't want to go to rabbit hole. I appreciate the spirit of the idea, and I don't know anything about how others have done this, but of course, these are bikes that would have an owner, right? And so allegedly that owner is responsible and would take care of it. And but I have to ask, I wonder, like, is there the infrastructure around the city for bike storages? So you have 1,000 more e-bikes, people driving them to a bus stop. Is the infrastructure at the bus stop to where people park it there? You certainly can't put it on the bus.
you can't put it
Yeah,
on
they
the
can
bus.
put them
You
on the-
could,
they
you
have
could
bus-
put
bus-
No, they have
one
right
or
on
two.
the bus,
You could put one or two,
Yeah.
because that's what they have. Your comment is like, I've got to drive to get on the bus. I guess some people would park it there and tie it up or go to work, come back. It just seems like there's a lot more logistics to consider, and then, but I mean, all about riding a bike. Just again, just
And I'd like to
appreciate the spirit of it.
to the WeGo proposal, because that is public transportation.
So we'll do that and then we'll come back to them all. So the other,
The last one.
yeah, the last request that came through from Councilmember O'Connell is a partnership with our historically black college and universities and WeGo. And so the summary that he listed out kind of listed each of the universities he had in mind. Is essentially providing public bus transportation to the students. I'm going to guess staff also. I don't know the
It's
C.
faculty, staff, students.
Yeah.
What's the dollar amount?
So a total of 1.2 million listed out by the programs. And the idea, I think, is that, listed out by the universities. The idea is that you launch them, you offer them for a certain period of time, and then the universities, could they then start to supplement it so that it's a one-time funding from here and then going forward.
So what's the time period? I didn't see exactly what time period the 1.2 would provide
I
this
don't know for how long.
service.
I don't know if that's a year's worth or if that's a 2 or 3 year.
Now this.
Well, it says annually, sorry.
Like this.
Estimated cost to utilize the program. It says it annually.
College
So that's just 1.2 million annually.
Broad public. Maybe
There
that
was
would
a-
be
1 year.
more.
Then
There was another city that did it that way.
That would be more, I don't know, impactful to it.
So those are the four. 1.3, I mean,
Like,
roughly.
let's go back to this HBCU thing, so if it's for a year, it's 1.2 million. Did the partner, I'm assuming these HBCUs have, they're wanna do this, or is this just an idea?
We probably just need to have them come and tell us.
Cause if they're not, or if they're not, obviously that's weird, but if they are, then it's like, well then, so at the end of the year, do you have the money in your budget to continue it? Otherwise, we've just given you, like, what have we really done?
Right.
Or maybe it's something we go budgets for, because they already have the free transportation for high school. Whether they used to,
Yeah.
high school and middle school students, so this would just be adding to their,
Yeah,
We'd
to
have to
their
hear from
budget.
That's my
WeGo.
understanding.
This would be like a pilot to see how it goes,
But
and
that's a-
maybe they would add it to their
That's
budget.
a taxpayer thing at that point, that comes out of our operating budget. So are we willing to add $1.2 million to our budget? I don't know that that's gonna fly.
Well, if it shows to be very productive and impactful, I don't see why not.
Well,
But this is an
that's up to an
opportunity to
administration. Like, I don't know that you wanna leave that up to, whatever administration is driving the budget that may be like, no, I just don't see, you know what I mean? It's like there's too much out there. It needs to be sustainable outside of political influence and, a different body. Like, I don't know that I wanna put that in. Like, I agree, WeGo, but WeGo would flip out probably. He said, oh, let's just add it to WeGo's budget, because they're like, great, this is something else we have to ask for, because they're clawing for every dollar that they get.
I think it would depend on the existing routes versus does it require a new route,
Right.
right? I mean, otherwise, if the bus is already
It's
going
probably
by.
dependent on a lot of things.
Did
Well,
we
it
go
sounds like
ask
it's
for
worth
this?
having them come and present to find out.
So let's go back up. Do y'all want to just take a vote on, do you want these folks to present? Do you want to go one by one? Is one by one better?
Seems like it's just a process question, right? Like everybody else has had a proposal's gotten a chance to present. I can't see why we'd say one is more meritorious to hear than another. So either,
There were a few that we did say,
yeah, that's where.
Either they didn't have a dollar amount attached, or
Yeah.
they didn't have
Or it
a
was-
real idea proposal, they were just.
and
so
some
we
of them
did
were
exclude
duplicate
those,
of
and some
things
those
we'd
are
already
duplicative,
funded,
right,
or they were
right.
just too much, so.
So these all seem new ideas.
I don't, if I may just offer this thought, let me try to put my thought together. I don't have a problem listening to all the proposals, right? That seems like that, maybe the spirit, that's what we're getting about. However, that is, these four proposals represent, add them up, that's $4 million. At the beginning of this meeting, we said we have somewhere between 6.8 million and maybe close to 10 million, depending on what happens, right? Today. A year from now, based on what falls out, that could end up more. It could be, if nothing falls out, it will be 6.8, it could be 10, 11, 12. We're talking about 4 million here today. They come next meeting, we fund them all at the levels they're asking. We're gonna be sitting here 3 months from now with 2.8 million, right? Just having the same conversation, Hunger Games, right? And so, to me, what is the right mechanism to really wrap it up and tie it up, right? There is a part of me that says, let's commit to what we said, that is like, we're done, let the next year go by, you said, you were saying about June of next year. At that point, we have to make a decision. Let's let the pieces fall where they may, and in 1 year, in the spring, late spring of next year, we will have a number. And that number will be somewhere between 6.8 and 10, 11, 12. And then, again, this is the wishful thing. To wrap the thing up with a bang, what is the one project that this committee can rally around to do a $10 million type project or whatever is left and be done with it? That way we honor what we have said, that is like we're done for the time being. And it allows for that whatever is going to trickle down and for that process to happen.
Yeah. No, that's-
Again, I don't know that I'm
we've talked
fully
about
embracing
that.
this idea. I'm just trying to balance
No, we've
what I'm hearing
talked about
about,
that.
well, we have 6.8, but here we have 4, then we're going to have 2.8. We will be here 3 months from now, and whoever in this next, in 2 months, is watching and is catching up, and then we'll have 2 or 3 more proposals of people that,
Unless we
well,
just say
send
we're
it.
not.
They have to.
Yeah, I do think it's
And I
appropriate to
think
say,
that's
look,
the
we are
feedback.
done. No more, we're not
That's the
accepting
feedback
any
Mary
other
Jo is looking for from
proposals.
us
Yeah,
today.
I
Do we
mean,
want to look at these proposals and then that's it? Or do we not want to look at any more proposals, that's it now, and set up the reserve fund? I think that's
Yep.
what you're looking
Yep.
for from us today.
Yep. It's just again,
So
how do we want to kind of run out the last allocation? Because then we're going to really be focused on monitoring. And then quarterly, you're going to be seeing a lot of reports. Vonda, her flights were canceled, so she couldn't make it today. But she even said, I'd like to start seeing some of the reports from some of the different nonprofits of who's getting served and, how many and, some of those program results. So that's what we'll dig into. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but, then we have to decide, I can send those reports to you all electronically, so then are we just meeting quarterly? Maybe, maybe even not that, so we're kind of in that
I want
phase.
to make a motion then, because I know some of these you've had for months.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would like to make a motion that we hear from these groups. That doesn't mean we're going to fund them, but we at least hear from them. But as of now, we cut it off after these groups, no more.
Okay, so
And then
from
we set
today,
up
if
our
I get an
reserve.
email, I'm gonna say, I'm sorry,
yes,
That's my motion.
yeah.
wallet's closed.
Given the lag, that we've had since the last meeting, I mean, for something to trickle in now seems like it's really an afterthought.
Yeah.
So,
What was the last one you got then? Or was it one of those 4?
It's actually been the 2 from the council members.
So what we have is,
We try to cut ourselves off all the time.
so we've got the Bordeaux Collective, so we actually have 5.
Council.
So we have the Bordeaux Collective, the Food Project, BBBS and TSU, EBikes, and the HBCU WeGo partnership. So we want to hear from all 5 of those, make a determination. Is that 2 meetings, or can we pack that into 1? I bet it's 2.
Let's give them a time frame where they each have X minutes and stick to it.
That never works,
It's
though.
mainly us speaking.
Yeah.
the issue's us.
They don't stick to
Good word,
it.
us.
We ask
Yeah,
them.
nobody sticks to it.
You're right, it's not you.
Well, and then, so make those determinations, and then after that, the catch-all is public safety salaries. I think it's appropriate to be consistent and do exactly what we did the last time instead of, reinventing the wheel, and then we're done. And then it's monitoring, is what I would say. Was that your motion?
Pretty much.
So,
Not about the reserve.
No, just about hearing these and these
Yeah,
being
let's
the
do these.
last proposals that we will hear.
so the proposal is to have these 5, either individuals, organizations, these 5 requests on a future agenda. That's what I hear. Second,
And
Second.
no more.
any questions?
that?
And no
Yes,
more.
and hard stop, yeah.
And this
Okay.
is it.
So then the next question is, should we split it into 2 meetings?
Yes, otherwise it's gonna be a 3-hour meeting.
So,
think.
that's easy, I think that's easy enough to work with folks. Then, do we want to schedule something, a meeting in April and a meeting in May?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. And then probably from there then, we can switch more to monitoring and we'll, in one of those meetings, we'll determine our future schedule, but.
Afterthought, do we wanna do 2 meetings in April, because May is budget for us, and we're gonna have meeting. And so,
Plus, where do we get the amendments in? Because you have 3 groups or 2 groups that have
I
amendments.
do, and those don't change any dollars, but I'll get to those.
But we have to hear them for the amendments? Oh, okay.
I'll tell you today.
Okay, good, okay.
is it possible to do 2 meetings in April so that we can, I mean, they probably want an answer quicker anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
But I know budget
Well-
in May is tough.
hi there, welcome.
Thought we weren't meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll look, and does anybody have, stick with Wednesdays? Does anybody want to switch? So what if we do, here, just on my phone. You want them back to back, or you want a little space? I mean, we could do I think we could do as quickly as April 5th.
I can't do April 5th, I have a community meeting.
12th and 19th, 12th and 26th.
Wait, start over again?
I mean, we could-
April,
We can do the 12th, 19th, 26th, so we can either do them back to back, we can,
I can do the 12th.
I can do the 12th, but I can't do the 19th or the 26th.
You can't do the 19th or 26th.
maybe we have to switch from a Wednesday.
I think the 12th looks like a consensus.
We could just do one long one on the 12th.
Do y'all wanna do a long one and just knock it out?
I would rather do one
Okay,
longer
okay.
one.
Well, and that's a good point, it
Can
doesn't
still-
have to be long,
Yeah, we could put a fence around them and
and ourselves.
And ourselves?
try, but at least for the presentation, because we've had a few that really did go.
Yeah, I don't think these have to,
Oh, these are pros.
I don't think these have to be all that long.
Right,
So, okay, April 12th?
sure.
Okay.
That I cannot do, but I'm the only one that I heard, so. There's actually a food and security panel that
And I'm a maybe that day, but I can try to change something.
Okay. Think we've got everybody else?
And then revisiting, when we said no more, what is the message they receive? It's shut off for now, but perhaps
No.
revisit it next spring?
No, I think we, at this point, we cut it off.
Then we know we're down to
This committee then picks where
the last
all
bucket drop.
yeah, where all the last pluses and minuses go.
Margie, you had said before, there was a cushion or an amount that you were also withholding for paying for administration of all of this. Is that considering all this?
That's already been,
passed that
that's already been deducted. The other thing that I had mentioned is, and this might, with a little bit of time, if we don't make a decision just yet, I'd like to come back to the committee. It's possible we have some unreimbursed from FEMA. There was a lot of expenses related to our sheltering that we expected to be reimbursed by FEMA, and our region, FEMA Region 4, is operating differently than some of the other regions, and so we got cut quite a bit of our, and remember, we had that reserve from the original public safety reserve, and so we're using that to fund what FEMA's not covering, but they're not covering more
Like how
than we
much more?
expected. Well, we've got about 7-ish million under appeal. Now, we still have that, we have that in the reserve, but yeah.
Yikes.
So if we get, anyway, it's one of those, so we'll know a whole lot more. It could be big numbers, but I'm still watching that reserve, we're covering it, but maybe not. So that might be the other thing that I'd like to come back at.
But if we put it under public safety salaries, doesn't it does not cover that?
No, so-
It'd have to be the, whatever we did before, the administrative reserve or
Yes,
something.
and I just wanted to clarify, because you said, well, we can just put it back to say public safety salaries like we did last time. But we didn't actually, what we did is, for the federal purposes, we reported public safety salaries, but we used the savings from that
Right.
salaries to create this reserve that
Yes.
we continued to spend COVID-related.
Right.
So it would have to be that same kind of thing, where what we'd really be saying is, we're gonna use the rest of the funds as X.
Right, and that's what I
The
mean.
savings would go to Y.
That's what I
that
mean.
kind of
So
thing.
the savings would create the account that the FEMA.
It could just increase the reserve that we're using for FEMA, and
Right.
then that could take years to settle, and then down the road, if that would just go back to general fund.
Yeah, so that's my preference.
That's eventually what,
But we
so.
don't have to decide
We don't
that
have to
until
decide that
December
now.
of 2024.
But I think what
before
Sean was
December
saying is when somebody calls,
Yeah.
the funds are now, completely spoken for. Yeah, we'll have to just create something at some point.
And I don't know if you were wrapping it up, but before we get too far, there was a first and a second, and I didn't hear like a full vote.
Oh, that's right, we did. So, for the 5 to come back on April 12th.
And
to be-
for there to be
And no more additional requests will be considered.
Yeah.
Internally, the committee will decide what it is. All in favor? Anybody opposed? All right, I think we're up to 7, right? Maybe 8, hold on. 8. 8 in favor, 0 against. Okay, so that's everything that's coming up. Let me go back one more item on the agenda, just because we're talking about the Treasury reporting. I gave you what our Q4 report was, mostly just to show you how really it's a very basic report to the Treasury because of our election to do the revenue replacement and provide general government services. So at the date was 12/31, we had provided $240,697,000. Of that had been obligated, almost $59 million had been spent. So now that's increased in this one that I just reported, another million, so closer to 60 million had been spent by the end of January. So that spent number will continue to go up. The other thing that is reported in the U.S. Treasury Report is where you can see just a little bit of how each year, so for 2020, we had to do a calculation for lost revenue. That was 216 million. The next year it was only 35 million. I don't expect there to be much more, but because we have supported 251.6 million, I'd like it to be all 259.8. So I'm hoping in 2022, we'll start doing the calculations here in the next couple weeks, that we get up to our full award, and then it's just clean. And again, that's kind of our safety net way of reporting it. So that's the U.S. Treasury reports that we do each quarter. We did our final CARES Act one also. Okay.
So, question, so for 2020 and 2021, we're up to estimated revenue loss being
251.6.
251. So we're almost there.
Yeah, we're almost there. We have to get to 259.8. So I don't need much more from 2022.
Right,
So we'll see where that.
Okay.
Again, just a quick reminder for anybody that's wondering, how do we have lost revenue if our revenue increased? It's because we use all of the Metro component units. This was all defined by the U.S. Treasury. So our component units do include the airport and the convention center, and they took the biggest hits in 2020. So that's where we got that big crux of that $251 million. And then so then in 2021 there was still some carryover. So we'll just see what 2022 looks like. But
Can I ask, specifically for the convention center, I know we do use quite a few of those funds. So if the bill that's currently at the state passes, what would that mean for this?
it wouldn't mean anything for this calculation. It certainly has impact on Metro.
Because that is only during the COVID years.
Yeah, this is really, so this will just get us to 2022
Okay.
on a calendar basis. And that should do it. I mean, now, this calculation does continue past that. So let's say we get 3 or 4 million. Then we have a chance to get the other 3 or 4. But I think at some point, we're not going to be showing losses anymore either, because even all the component units are growing in revenue.
Right.
Yep. The thing that we were able to do is use our historical growth. So our historical growth was 6.7%. So even in a year that we had an increase in revenues, and this is like at the highest level, if it was 3%, we still showed lost revenue. Even though we had revenue increase, it wasn't as great as our historical growth had been. So that's kind of how that calculation is working. So it's working to our favor. So it's helpful. So those are the reports. I will continue to post them on a website, on the finance website. There's an American Rescue Plan. And then later in summer, we do what I call a little more robust report, which then really talks about what have we been funding. It's more of a performance report. So these are kind of the required quarterly reports, and then annually you do a performance report. And it's a little, it's more robust. Pictures, a little more words and graphics, and talk about these are all the programs that we funded and these are the people we helped, and that's where we really get into how we really used the funds. And so that's going to be a much more meaningful report as the further we get into results. So you'll see that too. Okay.
You pulled that together? Who pulled? I was
Wade
gonna ask you that.
McManus did all of that on the last one. She did a fantastic job. And then we have to get with all of the departments, so we have to get their results and, you know, demographics and numbers and all of that. But yeah, Wade gets 100% of the credit for pulling that together.
Okay. Actually, I was going to ask that because I wasn't here then. But as I hear, right, I guess I'm thinking a year from now,
Yeah.
looking in the rearview mirror, right? How do we feel proud about what
Yes.
this body's done?
That report, I think, will become more and more important because as we get closer to the deadline of expenditures, we will have much more in the way of just statistics, you know, demographics and program results. And you start to look at all of these different resolutions and how many hundreds and thousands have been served. And so it's really accumulating that I think will really.
And so there's a cohesive way of gathering, putting all this together in sort of an infographic or
Well, and remember,
or
part of-
scorecard or something, that it's not only hearing, because
Yeah.
hearing or reading pages and pages of reports,
Well,
how
and
wonderful.
part of that administrative expenses that we set aside was for consultants, and it might be that we want to engage somebody. I mean, Wade and I are a team of two, and we're finance, not marketing and graphic design, you know, experts. So, I mean, that might be something where I come to the committee to say, hey,
We need to hire
we
somebody
really
to
want
do
it,
this.
something that really
That's nice.
demonstrates what we've done. So, that could, I had that kind of in the back of my head too. I was really impressed with what Wade pulled together, but I had been thinking we might want something, you know, that this committee might want to really look at and design.
Because this time around, it's been much more involved. You know, the first dollars, we were in the height of COVID. It was mostly emergency response.
Public response, yeah.
This time, we were all over the place,
Yeah.
so we may need some more help.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so we can come back to questions. I do have, so there are two items for amendment. The first one, if you recall, we awarded a $75,000 grant to VOAD, Volunteers Organizing After Disaster. And when I went to go do the contract, I asked them who their fiscal agent was. It's CFMT, and then our legal department reminded me that the resolution had to list the fiscal agent, not just the contract. So Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee has an account that is a VOAD account. They have been a longtime fiscal agent for them. And so the resolution that we passed awards the money to to VOAD. We really just need to amend it to say awarded to Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee as fiscal agent for VOAD.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion for that, second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Tara, I'll get with you. Anybody opposed? I didn't ask. Or nobody has to
Who
abstain?
sponsored that one?
I'll have to go back and look. Should we do the same? Are you all good with the same sponsor? Okay, so Tara, I'll go
Okay.
back on that. And then this one is a little bit of a, then the United Way contacted me last week. Their resolution, recall that they were awarded $3 million for rent, mortgage, and utility relief. Mortgage was for 0 to 100% of AMI because nobody else was providing mortgage relief. Rent was over 80 up to 100% because MAC had their funds. MAC no longer has funds. And so they have just over, I think it's $1,060,000 left of that $3 million, and they would like to amend their contract to allow 0 to 100% for rent relief, rather than just the over 80. They actually have used much more of those funds for mortgage, and not as much as they expected for rent. Now, the other comment, I will say that Rebecca Carter was the individual at United Way. She said, if we open that up, she said, we'd go through that money instantly, we would like to work, and you all will appreciate this. She said, we would like to work with Legal Aid Society and Judge Bell because they are working on eviction prevention, and we'd like the rent relief to go. She said, they have money for case managers and the support, but they don't have the money for the actual rent. I was like, yeah, because the committee gave them the money for the case managers and the work, but now they would,
So if they partner, then they can use that.
yeah,
Sounds
so
like a great idea.
I don't know that we need to write that into the resolution specifically, but I just thought you all would appreciate that, Rebecca had said, well, we know it's gonna go fast, but we're gonna focus on eviction prevention with these two partners, so.
Sounds great.
Can it be steered that way?
We can. We can say with a focus. I mean, I think I'd be cautious to eliminate somebody that wasn't working with those two
Otherwise
partners.
it gets there.
There were two other groups that were also doing.
Turk and Conexion are also. Is that what you mean?
No, Conexión and the Nashville Hispanic Bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the eviction, yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying is I don't want to name, my recommendation would not be to name a nonprofit because we want it to be available for everyone, but.
And
I
they
will-
know that there's,
And I will say that to Rebecca too.
okay, so I guess now with that being cleared, do I need to abstain on this?
I don't think so because it's really just changing what the resolution is going to be amended and they might have to be new ones.
I'm not clear on what you're,
Well, let me,
okay.
so the resolution, either amendment or new resolution, is going to say that United Way's resolution is amended to be 0 to 100%
Right.
for rent relief rather than over 80 to 100.
Okay.
It's not that we constraining the funds to be allocated
particular partner.
through a particular
Yeah,
partner.
not through a particular
That's just
partner, but-
Strategically, that's what they're gonna do, because if they just open, it'll be
Yes.
gone tomorrow, so.
Quote Alex, always abstain, but never twice in a row. Well, he's not with us anymore, but we're just.
Still alive, public, he's just not here.
Thank you for the clarification.
Not with us anymore.
So, go ahead.
I do need to abstain, actually.
Okay, with
I'm on the-
United Way,
I'm
you
on the
do.
board for
Yes,
United
yes.
Way, I'm general counsel.
Any other questions on that? Can we get a motion?
Did you make a motion?
Johnston
Yeah.
just made.
Oh, you did, okay,
Yeah,
so
I did.
motion to allow 0 to 100% on AMI for rent relief under the old one. Second? Any other questions? All in favor? Anybody opposed? And 1 abstention. So we have 7 in favor, 0, 1. Now, that is actually all the business. Are there any other questions?
I have one question about the Bordeaux project, and I missed a meeting, so I don't know, did they come present?
They did.
They did, because one thing, and are they gonna be coming back as part of our 5? So, one thing, just reading their proposal, I mean, obviously, it sounds like a great project, but I also noticed that there was a budget of like 5.3 million and 1.25 had been raised, and they're asking for 2.5. There's also just, not only how do you get it completed, but then also the operating expenses, but just trying to understand the sustainability of this. If
Those
we're-
were a lot of the questions.
If we're
that they-
providing the interim funding, that may or may not produce a building that stays there.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure they focus on that.
Those were a lot
when
of
they
the
come back.
questions that the
Yeah.
committee posed. It said,
Yeah.
hey, we're comfortable with the 2.5, but how do you fill the gaps? Ongoing revenue generation, how are you gonna, what kind of indirect revenue? So, they've got that. So, we're gonna offer everybody the 12th. That's after Easter, so Easter shouldn't be a problem. It's past spring break, so hopefully that's not an issue. But I'll let you know if any of those individuals can't make it. Or they make it because they want the money.
We're gonna give them a time on the presentation.
Yeah.
No more than 2 minutes.
I'm gonna get a timer and I'm gonna have
5
10 minutes for presentation and 15 minutes for discussion.
Yeah.
And y'all get cut off too.
I think Sean's right. I'm not sure the presenters have ever been the problem.
One more, good, like, presenter.
Yeah, some have been, but I would say normally, I just say the committee's very thorough. All right, any other questions, any other business? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good luck tonight, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Look, 4:05, Sarah.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.